Welcome to this session of Project Design and Management. I'm Manish Puranik at Seva Tarang Foundation, located based in Pune. With its range of back office services, Seva Tarang Foundation is a non-profit enabling on the mission of enabling NGO operations at every step. To know more about Seva Tarang Foundation's offerings in detail, you can check out the website sevatarang.org. Alright, moving on to today's subject. In the development sector, the term project, program, and portfolio are frequently used and often interchangeably. Programs are groups of related projects and activities that are managed in a coordinated way to achieve an impact that is greater than if they were managed individually. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to deliver a product or a service. Project is the smallest unit of any program portfolio, and therefore project design and management is very crucial as it goes long way in any organization's sustainability. Managing project in the development sector is anything but simple. Operating environments are complex, challenges are numerous, project relationships are complicated, and the cost of failure is high. In short, there is a lot that could go wrong. In today's session, we will try to understand why it is important to design and manage project by following conceptualization, definition, planning, documenting, and presenting your project, and some useful tips to do it with the help of commonly applicable standard and guidelines. However, there are two major factors that can cause a project to fail: assumptions and risks. It is always better to be prepared than frustrated, right? So, these steps can help us hope for the best but prepare for the worst. Let us take a look at how a project can fail right in its conceptualization. We will take an example of installing a swing on a tree for a hypothetical beneficiary. What possibly can go wrong starts right from the wrong need assessment. If a swing is to be put on a tree, it should have the passage to move back and forth, right? So the basic need for a swing to be useful is to have enough room to move smoothly. If it collides with the tree trunk, the very purpose of the swing is defeated. That is wrong need assessment, starting on a wrong foot right from ideation. If the need is understood wrongly, no wonder the project design will head for disaster. To make the swing useful, the project design decides to cut down the tree trunk to make way for the swing to move. There couldn't be a better example of poor project design, isn't it? Just to make sure that the fund flow is enough to move forward, many a times budgets are inflated, making them unrealistic. Of course, the funds will always suggest cuts in budgets to make it reasonable, but exaggerating budgets to cover probable cuts and making it unrealistic will never help it get through. Any such effort increases the chances of outright rejection. If the project cannot raise enough funds to support it, there is always the chance that the resources allocated would be inadequate. This is likely to result in installing only some parts of the project, which will make it not only incomplete and unsuccessful, but useless and unproductive, wasting the time, effort, and resources went into it. Inadequate capacities to implement the project effectively on ground and severe lack of proper monitoring and evaluation matrices led to almost zero useful documentation of the project, making it virtually non-existent. There are external risk factors like natural disasters, among others, which should be considered in the risk mitigation plan. All these and many other challenges can result in project delays, making it obsolete, irrelevant and unproductive. In conclusion of this illustration, let us see what the actual need of the project was. As you can see, what the actual need of the project was and what it tried to deliver were poles apart. That makes the conceptualization of your project extremely important. Let us enter the first phase, conceptualization. Start by focusing on the problem that needs to be solved and how to solve it. Find out if you have all the resources to complete the task necessary to solve the issue. Keep on asking questions till you get actionable answers to them. A need assessment is a process for determining the needs, otherwise known as gaps, between current situation and desired outcomes. When used properly, this assessment provides valuable insights into project's purpose and objectives. By combining multiple perspectives and methods, you can hope to overcome the weakness or biases and the problems that come from single method or a single observer perspective, thereby increasing the credibility and validity of your solution. A feasibility study is a detailed analysis that considers all the critical aspects of a proposed project in order to determine the likelihood of its succeeding. Success may be defined primarily by objectives served and outcomes derived to justify the viability. The way you get project stakeholders to approve your project plan and have their expectations included in your project concept. It's a series of meetings and discussions where you get stakeholders to discuss problems, solutions, and other project deliverables. You will be going to the funder for raise funds to support your project. The first thing funders will check whether your project is aligned with either SDG, CSR, or ESG, as it will help them in their respective compliances. This step will increase fundability of your project manifold. Ability and feasibility are two different things. There could be a project that you can do but should not. And another scenario, there could be a project you should do but you couldn't do it for certain reasons. Fulfilling both the criteria of can and should is a must while conceptualization. At the end of this phase, you should have a project scope and statement of work ready with you. Now, we can move on to take the step of defining your project for all stakeholders. All those entities that have an ability to impact and would be impacted by the project are your project's stakeholders. A good project definition identifies the purpose of a project. A strong definition helps you manage stakeholder expectations by clearly detailing how the project solves the problems at hand, and it should prevent confusion and miscommunication throughout the project lifecycle. Project definition includes a high-level overview using basic information to get your project started. The goal of project definition is to guide preliminary conversations and decisions that will lead to the project's goals and objectives. Meet your stakeholders to learn about their expectations. Ask a lot of questions and go over all the necessary details to be sure you really understand what's required of you. Once you have a clear understanding of what needs to be done, you can write down your theory of change. Your theory of change will help you figure out what impact the project intends to make. Alright, but to visualize that impact, it must be converted into a table of actionable activity, tangible output, measurable outcome, verifiable indicators to implement it on the ground. That is your logical framework approach. A theory of change is a method that explains how a given intervention or set of interventions are expected to lead a specific development change. You develop your theory of change by writing down answers to the 4 basic questions. What is the intervention needed in first place? And if it is confirmed that the intervention is definitely needed, you would add a suffix, why is the intervention needed? Rationale behind the purpose of your project. Second question is, who is the intervention for? These are the primary and secondary beneficiary of your project. For them, you are conceptualizing this project, so their description should be discrete. Third question is, how will the intervention work? So you should make sure that the intervention will work, and if yes, how it should work. Strategy and philosophy behind the intervention is your process to make the intervention work. And last but not the least question is, what is the primary outcome of your intervention, which is the measurable outcome, which you should able to show the sponsors or stakeholders. Logical Framework Approach, LFA, stands for Logical Framework Approach or Analysis. There are multiple models of LFA used worldwide for project design. The commonly used and most popular and effective model is the 4x4 matrix of 4 rows and 4 columns describing the project in a nutshell. 4 rows represent overarching goal, that is your impact, measurable outcome, tangible output, doable activity, while 4 columns represent narrative, that is the description, indicators, criteria of your selection, means of verification, that is the data source, evidence of what has been, what the outcome was, and assumptions, those are the expectations, your expectations from all the stakeholders, and risks which you must mitigate in the risk mitigation planning. So what is the goal? Goal is the impact, what long-term social, political, economic, health, etc. changes do you hope will occur as a result of this initiative? Outcomes are the changes in knowledge, attitude, skills, behavior, etc. and can be separated into short-term and long-terms. So how would you define the outcome? So the simple description of showing the sponsor that what you are doing is working are your outcomes. Direct results of activities, example, attendance, participation, distribution of materials, etc. These are your outputs. So showing the sponsor that you are doing what you said you would do are your outputs. And then at the final last stage, there are activities at the base. Project tasks that are carried out on a regular basis are the activities. So this defines your row side of goal, outcome, output and activities. Now let us see what I mean by narrative, indicators, means of verification, risks and assumptions. How this logical framework works, there are 3 major initial requirements. Those are the means and inputs, costs and preconditions. If there are sufficient input, means and cost, then the preconditions are met, activities can start. If the activities are undertaken and the assumptions hold true, then the intended outputs will be created. If these outputs are delivered and the assumptions hold true, then the purpose will be achieved. If the purpose is achieved and the assumptions hold true, then the intervention will contribute to the overarching goal. One important thing that needs to be noted here is, even though the sequence is from top down, that is goal to activities, in actual implementation on ground, that sequence will be exactly reversed, starting from activities and reaching a goal. It is always better to understand the concept with the help of an example. What we have seen is a conceptual framework explaining the logic behind the project elements. Now, let us see a real case of putting the LFA to practice for a school project of increasing continued education. The overall goal of the project is to increase the number of grade 5 and 6 primary students continuing to high school by 10% within 3 years, broken down into outcomes of improving reading proficiency among those children within 3 years and immediate outputs as 500 5-6 students, grade 5-6 students with low reading proficiency complete a reading summer camp. 500 parents of children in grade 5-6 with low reading proficiency help their children read at home. The project design is completed by filling in all the fields of the table, including assumptions, along with looking convincing and promising. This presentation is easy to understand and explain, as any stakeholder can find answer to any of his or her concern in this framework. As you can see, there are risks and assumptions at all the stages, and if those assumptions are fulfilled, then only that project can progress as planned. Now, let us move on to the project planning stage. Once the LFA is in place, we can move on to the next phase of planning the project lifecycle. In this phase, you set the goals and define the deliverables. Here you identify what must be done, including the steps to take and their deadlines. It also includes the resources that will be used. The planning phase focuses on developing a roadmap for the team to follow and therefore is key to successful project management. During this phase, you essentially set project goals, set up a collaborative resource, and organize your team. As many of you most probably would know it already, SMART is the most popular method for goal setting, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, real-time, and realistic and time-bound. So specific stands for improve reading proficiency among children in grade 5-6 by 20% within 3 years was the goal in the example that we have seen for LFA. So what needs to be achieved, for whom it needs to be achieved, and in what time plan it is clearly defined in this statement. All of these elements make it clear and to understand, and for any other making it very, very specific. Measurable, creating criteria that you can use to measure the success of goal both quantitatively and qualitatively. For 500 5-6 grade students, by 20% is quantitative measure, while improving reading proficiency and continuing to higher education is qualitative measure. Attainable or achievable, identifying the most important goals and what it will take to achieve them. A singular objective of increasing reading proficiency amongst only 500 students of 5-6 grade in 3 months makes the goal attainable, as almost every parameter is fixed to make it achievable. Relevant or realistic, you should be willing and able to work toward a particular goal. The goal should be something that you can relate to and not that seems completely irrelevant or unrealistic. This will help you your commitment towards its achievement and your collaboration with your team. Timely or time-based. Create a time frame to achieve the goal. A goal without a deadline is just a dream. Period. During the planning phase, we have seen that you have created the goals, objectives, and the plan for that to achieve those goals. Once the project plan is in place, the next step is documenting the project. At this time, roles and responsibilities are clearly defined, so everyone involved knows that what they are accountable for. Here are some of the documents you will create to ensure the project will always stay on the track. Scope document. Scope document is a document that clearly defines the project, including the need of the project, benefits of the project, objectives of the project, deliverables, and the key milestones. A scope statement may change during the project, but it shouldn't be done without approved request for change from all the stakeholders. This is very, very important because changing the scope will change everything, including your time, scope, guideline, timeline, or other aspects and resources. Second document that you will create is work breakdown structure or work breakdown schedule. This is a visual representation that breaks down the scope of the project into manageable sections for managing them by the team. The third document is the milestones of the project. Milestones are identifying high-level goals that need to be met throughout the project for including them in the Gantt chart. Gantt chart is a visual timeline that you can use to plan out tasks and visualize your project timeline. Communication plan is developing a proper messaging system for your project and creating a schedule of when to communicate, what to communicate, and with whom to communicate based on schedule of deliverables and milestones. And last is the risk management plan. Identifying all foreseeable risks. Common internal risks include unrealistic time and cost estimates, budget cuts, changing requirements, and lack of committed resources. External risks include natural disasters, policy changes, law and order situations, so on and so forth. All these factors must be considered while putting together your risk mitigation plan. So project documents will include scope document, work breakdown structure, milestones, Gantt chart, communication plan, and risk management plan. Being mostly about behavioral changes that are evolutionary, and any organization aspiring to put its theory of change in practice with a logical framework approach must survive long enough to witness social changes that tend to be extremely slow and take years to manifest. Sustainability of any organization is directly dependent on its financial viability. Fundraising is the only option available to NGOs for which fundable projects is the only solution. Vision, ideas, intentions could be great, but that doesn't make them sellable. To attract, invite, and engage funders' interest require a deliberate effort of putting all of it on paper. Articulating a proposal might make it impressive, but to make a well-informed decision, funders need data-driven facts and figures, matching their priorities and objectives. Is there a way to make your project fundable? So what it appeals to the funders in a convincing manner? Well, although there couldn't be a one-size-fits-all solution, you can try and make your project as promising as possible. The easiest way to do this is putting yourself in the funder's shoes. Put on the hat of the sponsor and think from his/her point of view. Think of all the questions and concerns the approver might have and start writing their answers in a logical order. Take help of following list of components to make your project proposal as credible as possible. Your starting point should be baseline survey. A baseline survey is an important activity to determine the before and after situation of a project. A project has a start and end date. For progress to be measured, it is very important to conduct a study that will measure the situation at the start of the project and the situation after the project is finished. The second thing is delivery process. You must have a process documentation ready with you. Having a map of sequential steps to complete the process of project delivery within the stipulated timeline makes the project promising and increase the chances of funding, as you are showing the funder that you know what is to be done and how to do it with a structured plan. Third thing is delivery tools. To build the confidence of the potential funder in your project proposal, you should demonstrate your preparedness with infrastructure, technology, human resources, operational requirements that are essential to complete your project as planned. Next is reporting systems. Again, a very important component. Keeping the project stakeholders informed about the status of the project on the go is very crucial. Designing and deploying communication channels, tools, templates, and standards for capturing project progress and reporting it to the stakeholders make a project more acceptable to the funders. Resources. To arrive a most reasonable, acceptable, and adequate budget, breaking down all the goals, objectives, and milestones of the project to smaller, manageable tasks will give you idea of exact resource requirement of the project at every stage. It will lead to the last stage, budgeting. Once you have a list of tasks, its owners and the tools required to complete those tasks, cost estimation based on the resource requirement and the proposed project timeline could be easy, as all you need to do is put those requirements in a matrix. This also makes it very easy to understand and analyze once the project is put in a spreadsheet. The last but not the least is FAQ. Answers to all the questions and concerns that a funder may have. This will strengthen your proposal further because this will give all the answers to all the concerns of the funder. In the last slide, we will see what are the enablers of funding proposal. The crux of developing a fundable project is that everything well defined must also be feasible. Project resource assessors are always concerned about how a project will do in the future, and it is the potential outcome that will count the most. Following are the key components of a good project. A smart objective aligned with SDG or CSR or ESG compliances. Let us understand this better a little bit. SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals, CSR Corporate Social Responsibility, and ESG is the Environmental Social Governance. All of these compliances are being made mandatory in India also, and all the corporates who are eligible for these compliances will have to show what projects they are undertaking, what programs they are running, and what impact they are creating. So it becomes very, very important for them to see that your projects aligns either with the Sustainable Development Goals or the CSR activities or the ESG compliances, which is mandatory for them. Second point is the LFA, your LFA, a reasonable LFA, logical framework approach to verify the outcome and impact of the project. As we have seen in the example, it clearly explains the nuances of the project with variable indicators, assumptions and risk, resource requirements and everything divided into goal, outcome, output and activities. So a good LFA is very, very convincing for the project funder to get your project approved. Third point is a competent team of administrative, management and technical experts. Again, you need to understand that the team must comprise of all these departments because administration is required for project management. Management are the techniques that the project, M&E of the project will be taken care of, and technical expertise will be required on the on-fit implementation of the project. So your team must have all kind of expertise, administrative, management and technical. The next point is tools, techniques and technology to manage the project effectively. In absence of tools or techniques, or if you are not using the technology, your project cannot work as efficiently as possible. And last but not the least is again the proof of concept. What is the proof of concept? The proof of concept is the project that you have already successfully completed. You have all the data for that project, that intervention, which you can show that you have done, you have already done, you are able to do it, and that proof of concept will serve as a testimony for your proposal, which will definitely increase your chances of getting funding for that project. To sum up this session, you can try and cover the above 5 key areas in your project plan, being very, very important for your funding project. I will repeat all those 5 areas. Your project must have a smart objective, aligning with SDG, CHR or ESG. Your project must have a reasonable LFA. Your project have a team, competent team of project management, project implementation team. You should have tools, techniques and technology to manage and monitor and evaluate the project. And it is better to having a proof of concept as a testimony of your previous achievements, which would strengthen your case further. So these are the 5 basic key areas that you must work on to prepare a very fundable and a convincing project proposal. So that is all for this session. Thank you very much for your time. Please use the chat box for typing your questions and feedback. Good luck and all the best.